The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
Good morning here at 5 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us. I'm Maddie Jansen alongside Alex Fisher. It is another foggy start out there.
It is, and we're going to get to Kevin's forecast in just a bit as we keep an eye out on those delays that could be coming down later this morning.
All right, but first we begin this morning with breaking news from overnight. A person has died after being hit by a car on Highway 99. It happened just before 2:30 this morning on the 99 just south of Laredo Highway. Details are still limited, but a coroner's van arrived at the scene of the crash and a body could be seen covered in a tarp. We'll continue to follow this story and provide more updates as they become available. And a person was also hit and killed in central Bakersfield last night. It happened just before 9 p.m. on Buck Owens Boulevard near Gilmore Street. According to police, a man was crossing the street outside of a crosswalk when he was hit. BPD says the driver stayed on scene and it does not appear speed or impairment factored into the crash.
From our 17 follow-up file this morning, family and friends gathered last night to remember a local teen who was tragically killed while riding on a motorcycle with his stepdad in northwest Bakersfield. Community members held a candlelight vigil for 13-year-old Nicolas Peterson at the corner of Hagman and Coffee Roads at the very spot where the boy lost his life 1 year ago. Prosecutors say Christina Moreno-Gonzalez was driving the SUV that crashed into the motorcycle, carrying Nick and his stepfather, John Deal. Deal suffered serious injuries but survived the crash. Family members say Nicholas was always willing to help someone in need.
And I remember one day I asked him, as he's jingling the change in his pocket while we were at the grocery store, and I asked him, "Do you have money in your pocket?" "Yes, Auntie, I do." And I said, "What are you doing with money? How much you got?" And, giving him a hard time about it. And he says, "Well, what if somebody needs a quarter?" The night of the accident, when I was finally able to come down here, I found 4 quarters on the ground where Nick was laying.
The driver who hit the boy and his stepdad is due in court later today. She is charged with vehicular manslaughter and gross negligence.
Your time now is 5:03, and now to shocking new data on the coronavirus in Kern. More people are sick with COVID-19 than at any other point in the pandemic, but it also shows fewer people are in the hospital with more severe symptoms of the disease, possibly indicating a change in how we see this pandemic.
5,200 new cases were reported yesterday. Those people were infected last week. The most infectious day of this pandemic so far, last Monday. That's when an astounding 1,800 people tested positive on that day alone. However, the number of people in the ICU with more severe symptoms continues to remain stable. 29 people are fighting for their lives in the ICU here in Kern County. That is a rate that has remained steady since Thanksgiving. We also learned of another 5 new deaths. Those people died in early December.
Although there are encouraging signs with how we deal with the pandemic, it may be too early to tell. A vast majority of people in the hospital are those who are not vaccinated, according to public health. And 50% of the population still has no protection. That's hundreds of thousands of people still vulnerable.
COVID testing protocols in schools have changed and testing kits have been sent out across the state. Local school districts are already providing tests to families, but they're doing it in different ways. 17's Marco Torres explains.
Schools are handling the COVID test protocol differently. Some are having parents take home the COVID test for their kids, while others are having them test on site. Fruitvale School District is using its COVID tests in a free drive-through for students and their families in the district parking lot. While other school districts like Panama Buena Vista Union School District and the Bakersfield City School District are sending the kits home to families upon request. The Kern High School District has all of the kits available at their schools. Parents say these extra steps really do make a difference.
It makes it convenient just because, they're providing it here at school instead of us having to go find a place to take them. I just don't have the time for that. So it makes it easier for me to get it from the school and, have the kids get tested.
Families have already started taking advantage of the free COVID tests. In Fruitvale, about 350 students have already taken the test since last week. But teachers and students since then have tested positive, and the strain has weighed down on the school system with the lack of subs. However, because the isolation limit has decreased from 10 days to 5 days upon a negative COVID test, Teachers and students are finding themselves back in the classroom quicker than before. We reached out to the Bakersfield City School District multiple times throughout the day asking questions, but the public information officer, Tabitha Mills, says they are too busy to answer. Now, all the districts that would talk with us say their tests are optional, but encourage families to use them if any symptoms begin to show.
It makes you feel kind of great because at least they're looking into it, because there's a lot of people going down. Take advantage of them. It's a good thing. Wear your mask.
Meantime, current homicide detectives are investigating the death of a woman in Lake Isabella. The woman was found dead in a home near the corner of Williams Court and Reeder Drive Sunday morning. Deputies say the death was determined to be suspicious and homicide detectives were called out. The woman has not been identified.
Now to Kern County's homeless epidemic, and county officials confirm this year's point-in-time homeless count has been postponed due to the pandemic. In the past, volunteers have fanned out across the county to determine how many people are living on the streets without shelter. Last year's count was done a little differently due to COVID concerns, but the study showed last January there were 2,150 people living without permanent housing, sheltered and unsheltered. That's about 570 more than the previous year. This year's count has been postponed to February 24th. If you would like to volunteer, you can sign up at BKRH. 17 News is your local election headquarters. The first week of 2022 was full of political intrigue here in Kern County, and this week begins with another big development. After Supervisor Mike Maggard's retirement announcement last Monday, another supervisor is expected to make an announcement today that could bring another big shakeup to the Board of Supervisors. 17's Chris Burton joins us in studio this morning with more. Chris?
Well, Alex, today, 5th District Supervisor Leticia Perez is officially launching her campaign as a Democratic candidate for the 35th State Assembly District. It's an announcement that's been months in the making. Perez, who sat on Kern's Board of Supervisors since 2013, told 17 News about her intention to run for state assembly way back in August, but was waiting to see if the incumbent, Assembly Member Rudy Salas, would make a run for Congress. Now that the statewide redistricting process is in the books, we're getting a better picture of the upcoming race. We'll show you this map here. The new 35th district splits right down the city and cuts out most of East Bakersfield, leaving the rest of the city for the 32nd. This district shares the most land with what is Rudy Salas's current district, but there are some significant changes, among them the disappearance of Kings County. And because Kings County is more Republican, this 35th district is now more blue. Perez's team on Kern's board ends in 2024. If she were to be elected to the state assembly, she would depart for Sacramento in 2023, leaving her seat vacant for a full year, and that would mean Governor Gavin Newsom could appoint someone to fill that position for a year. Now, Perez is expected to make her official announcement at 10 a.m. this morning in Jefferson Park. In studio, Chris Burton, 17 News.
Thank you, Chris. Today, President Biden and Vice President Harris will renew a push for federal voting rights legislation when they speak in Atlanta, Georgia, a state at the heart of the civil rights movement and now the voting rights battle.
It is one of the president's signature agenda issues, and Democrats are under intense pressure from voting rights advocates to get it done. NBC's Alice Barr has more from Washington.
Good morning, Alex and Maddie. President Biden has called changes to state voting laws 21st century Jim Crow, while Republican state leaders insist they're trying to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. The debate could come to a head this week. President Biden traveling to Georgia today, ground zero for Republican-led efforts to change state voting laws. The president set to address what he calls an assault on voting rights.
Right now, in state after state, new laws are being written, not to protect the vote, but to deny it.
19 states have passed laws ranging from limiting mail-in ballots to voter ID requirements since the 2020 election, when former President Trump and his supporters falsely claimed widespread fraud. Democrats say it's a deliberate attempt to suppress the vote, especially among people of color, vowing to pass federal voting rights protections.
The time has come to act to defend democracy and protect voting rights, even if it means changing Senate rules to restore the Senate.
To overcome Republican opposition, top Democrats want to change a long-standing rule requiring 60 votes to pass legislation.
They want to silence millions of Americans and take over the Senate so they can take over elections.
And this must change.
Civil rights advocates frustrated by Washington's inaction, now mounting a pressure campaign.
The president said he was going to stand with the black community. There is no more important issue, the protection of voting rights.
The White House says the president hears those calls for action and today will make clear to the American people what's at stake and his plans to protect it. Senate Democrats plan to try to advance voting rights legislation as soon as this week, but at least 2 moderate Democrats could stand in the way. They voiced opposition to changing Senate rules because of the precedent it could set. In Washington, Alice Barr, 17 News.
Making news around the state, universal health care, a gas tax holiday, and billions to address homelessness, climate change, and public safety. Those are a few of the financial priorities Governor Gavin Newsom presented yesterday in his proposed state budget. Here's a quick snapshot of the governor's $286 billion budget, which includes a surplus of $45 billion. The governor wants to spend $71 billion on K-12 schools, $22 billion on higher education, another $22 billion to fight climate change, $14 billion on homelessness, and perhaps the most controversial proposal, more than $2 billion on health care for low-income adults living here illegally.
California is poised to be, if this proposal is supported, the first state in the country to achieve universal access to health coverage. We said we're going to do it. We said it would take a few years. We're committed to doing it.
The governor also wants to delay a hike in the gas tax and provide more money for transportation projects and to fight wildfires and COVID-19. There's also the possibility of another Golden State stimulus check. The legislature has until June 15th to act on the budget.
Some are praising the governor's announcement that he wants to bring back COVID sick pay, as the latest COVID surge highlights disparities between who gets paid sick days and who does not. According to a national compensation survey, nearly 80% of all private sector workers get at least one paid sick day, but only 33% of workers whose wages are at the bottom 10% get any paid sick leave. The survey by Harvard's Shift Project also found that 65% of workers who reported being sick in the last month said they went to work anyway.
Education news now. Governor Newsom's proposed budget also contains a nice plum for Bakersfield, a plum that could be worth $1/3 billion. The governor yesterday announced intention to give $83 million to CSU Bakersfield to research how new directions in energy development as the state reduces its use of fossil fuels.
$537 million will be going to the CSU with the support of the legislature, $304 million ongoing. And then new dollars as part of this budget, one-time money, including a Bakersfield Innovation Center, Bakersfield in Kern County, at the center of this transition to low-carbon green growth. Remarkable CSU, $83 million investment.
No groundbreaking date has been set for the new lab. The governor's proposed budget would also add $250 million to help workers train for and find new jobs outside the oil extraction industries.
A local library is officially back in business after being shut down for nearly 2 years. Kern County Library officials yesterday hosted Baker's Dozen at the Baker Street branch, complete with free pastries, board games, and of course a lot of books to check out. McGruff, the crime dog, also dropped by to join in on the festivities.
We're always going to have board games, have coloring sheets. We have 5 computers ready for the public, and we always want to have events happening right now. Tomorrow we're going to have our first story time.
The Baker Branch Library will be open every Monday and Tuesday from 11 a.m. till 6 p.m.
And there are several other libraries around Kern County that are reopening that have been closed for a long time this week, and then also expanding their hours. So that's good.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.